The arms bonanza has been fueled by the performance of high-tech weapons in the Gulf. Smart technology where bombs and missiles are driven not by man but by computer. But there's increasing evidence their success has been oversold by the West.
One. Launch.
Missile away!
This could have dangerous repercussions.
On December 4th, 1992, President George Bush announced he was sending up to 28,000 U.S. troops to Somalia to help provide humanitarian relief in a strife-torn country where hundreds of thousands of people had died of starvation. Not quite a year later, shortly after a failed raid that took the lives of 18 American servicemen, President Bill Clinton announced an exit strategy for the United States. In less than a year, the United States went from welcomed savior to embattled occupier. How did this happen? What went wrong? How did a mission of mercy that won almost universal acclaim for its humanitarian intentions turn into another armed intervention in a developing country? Since his inauguration, President Clinton has repeatedly threatened to bomb the Bosnian Serb forces. In August 1993, NATO finally sanctioned the use of airstrikes, subject to a UN veto. There are still widespread doubts about the effectiveness of this action.
A lot of the bombing is done by mobile artillery pieces, some of them located in population areas, so there's a danger you're going to hit civilians, which is bad publicity. Secondly, you're not going to destroy the artillery pieces, and the Serbs can fire back and claim, look, we've defeated the United States and NATO, they've been unable to destroy our forces.
Bombing alone does not win wars. From the Battle of Britain in 1940 to Baghdad in 1991. As in Iraq, effective military intervention could only be achieved by placing troops on the ground. According to a Pentagon Joint Chiefs of Staff estimate, it would take an entire field army, 400,000 troops, or 4/5 of the total U.S. force serving in Vietnam at the height of that war, to intervene effectively in Bosnia. A Congressional Research Service report on American military options in the former Yugoslavia compared a potential war in the Balkans to the war in Iraq. The study found that conditions would be worse. Fewer allies would share the burden of combat, and the enemy they would face, in the words of the study, the enemy would be uncertain.
Nuclear testing. How's the sound person? Have we stopped testing nuclear weapons? We have? Did you know that the U.S. tested over 900 weapons and more than 200 of those tests were secret? How do I know that? Because I have my sources. Do you trust your government, sound person? You do? I've got a monument in Washington I want to sell you. Hi, my name's Jose, and I want to welcome you to a national award-winning show called Politically Correct Cooking. And it is an award-winning show because of the high caliber of our guests. Please give a warm, politically correct cooking welcome to my dear friend, writer, researcher, and raconteur, Patricia. Come on down.
Thank you, Jose.
Patricia, it's a pleasure.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, the pleasure is mine. Well, when I ran into you on the street, you told me one of the few Americans to go to Iraq. The FBI thinks you're a spy.
The girl's got her troubles.
The Iraqis think you're a spy.
Such is life.
You're working on a book on misguided missiles.
And other failures of Desert Storm.
Other failures of Desert Storm. I saw some videos of you on some news shows. You're a Desert Storm scholar.
I am.
Associate professor at Johns Hopkins.
Yep.
All sorts of other stuff. You've been in Penthouse.
I have my brain only. Get it straight.
Okay.
Don't
okay.
start up.
Okay.
Do not get any ideas yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
And plus all sorts of other things. You want to talk about Somalia. You want to talk about Bosnia. Some of the research that you've done, the Pentagon doesn't like you. You did research on friendly fire, created a lot of consternation, started a GAO investigation, all sorts of stuff. Now, what I want to do is find out what we're going to eat, because I want to let you start telling us what's going on. What does your research show?
Well, before we start, I gotta give our viewers. We the idea that I'm not a cook, to be frank with you.
Okay.
I'm just not. I envy those who can effortlessly cook, and I am so glad that you are going to be doing the cooking.
It will be a pleasure
I am
and
so
an honor
happy. Oh, thank you so much. Thank
to
you.
cook for you.
Thank you. And I might add, to be on the tube today when across the rest of the country and the world, people are talking up the war.
Well, this is a big day because this is the eve of potential NATO aggression in Bosnia.
That's right, yeah. We once again, the television and the journalists are setting us up for high-tech fantasies. Technophoria is seducing the nation again as we talk about Bosnia and airstrikes as a solution to bring about peace. We're talking about bombing Bosnia into peace.
It sounds like the old Vietnam line where we had to destroy a village in order to save it.
That's exactly right.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Now, how...
Illogical. So, as on the eve of the bombing of Bosnia, and as we are in retreat from Somalia, this is an important time.
Somalia is a mess?
Right, Somalia is a mess. The nation is in chaos here at home with poverty and homelessness on the rise, but abroad we're in total chaos. If you take a look back there, if you can see, if your camera can close in on that.
Thursday, February 10th.
Right. We've got NATO gives Serbs airstrike deadline. We've got Israel and the PLO resolving key security issues, so we have a promise of peace. And here, a very small little section of the newspaper, we see Sudanese flee army. If you read this article, and it's about, as you can see, 4
column inches or so?
Right, and about 4 paragraphs. We have over here 100,000 people fleeing certain death. Over here, we have NATO ordering airstrikes because 68 people were killed in a market. Now, I don't want to minimize anyone's life, but I think it's important that we look behind the headlines, that we look and remember that in March, we are running scared from Somalia. We are just as certainly as we ran scared, with all due respect to the Vietnam veterans, just as surely as we ran from Vietnam.
We got the heck out of Dodge.
We sure did. We got the heck out of Dodge.
We're trying to get out of Somalia.
And we're getting out of Somalia, and we're thinking about going into Bosnia, because we hear 68 people have been killed.
Now, U.S. involvement in Somalia. George Bush sent folks in, American troops in, to help starving people.
Yeah?
Now, Clinton's president now. We seem to have gotten involved in certain sides of the Civil War. How did the U.S. lose its focus, or what is the focus of the U.S. in Somalia? How did the U.S. get in Somalia? What is in Somalia for us?
Oil.
Oil. Kind of like...
Big-time oil. Just like there was oil in Iraq.
Just like the U.S. went to war in Iraq to bring democracy back to Kuwait, we're going into Somalia to...
To bring oil back to the gas tank.
Bring oil back to the gas tank.
That's it. You've got it, flat out. And that, I might add, is pursuant to a report by the American Petroleum Institute. This isn't me saying it. It wasn't very long before we went in there that the American Petroleum Institute did put on the record that, in fact, there were enormous gas and oil reserves
in that bay there,
and resources found. Exactly.
Right.
Plus, Somalia gives us that foothold in the Middle East that we want to keep an eye on Saddam Hussein.
Right.
So the strategic importance of Somalia is quite evident.
It's on those straits there.
Yeah, exactly. So with that said, one would think that on the face of it, as we are told that we're going in to Somalia to save starving lives, that is a most worthwhile mission. You cannot deny the sight of people dying.
It's the TV sets showing starving people.
Exactly.
Very sad. It touches the heart. Hugs those strings.
You got it. 1 year later and $1 billion later, where are we? American soldiers are being torn apart, limb by limb, in the streets by angry Somalis.
And
now,
these
something
are
went wrong.
people that we went in to save.
These are people we went in to save.
Now, one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was this battle that I think just turned American forces around.
In Somalia.
In Somalia. I think it was around the middle of October sometime.
That's right.
There was an attempt to capture some of Adid's main, his brain trust there,
Right.
possibly Adid. Something happened. All the U.S. technology, top. Now, we're not talking about U.S. reservists that are weekend warriors. We're talking about the Delta Force commandos, Black Beret, trained to the hilt.
Right.
Top of the line U.S.
Talking about
soldiers
the top of the line.
got in there and ran into a buzzsaw.
The buzzsaw we ran into Somalia was a determined military. It was a people who quickly went from the pitiful poor in need of salvation and saviors to a people who fast began to recognize or to begin to feel that they were being invaded. We had an enormous breakdown of and a conflict of missions. The bottom line is that we went in there and we went in to save, and lo and behold, after we'd gotten done saving, we didn't turn around and leave. It looked like we were going to set up housekeeping, and the people didn't like it, and they didn't want us there. And Apache helicopters couldn't land in these small little towns without killing people. You couldn't land on top of them. And you had an embittered, embattled people.
Casualties, civilian casualties, mothers, daughters, sons, fathers, non-combatants killed. 1,000 casualties in this small battle.
Yeah, that tells us, back to what we were talking about, which is why we're pulling out of there and this battle of October, mid-October. Here, we lose just about 100 casualties or thereabouts. The Somalis lose 1,000. 1,000. What does this mean? This means that Somalia is committed to the end. They will fight with their teeth and their nails. And this is low-intensity warfare. This is guerrilla warfare. This is what Vietnam was all about. This is what, interestingly enough, $1.7 trillion, which was spent through the 80s, should have been able to go in and defeat a determined enemy with a very well-structured, or so we think, military, and a very high-tech military. And let me tell you something, we couldn't do it. Now, what we're going to do in Bosnia, my personal opinion, and it isn't just my opinion, it's also the opinion of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a report that's come out that's little circulated. We don't hear about it. It's also the opinion of other experts. We can't do it. We cannot. It's particularly foolish. It's particularly foolish to think we're going to go in there and using the capabilities that we've got, go in there and knock off one by one. Thank you. I'll have one too.
Have it to me.
Thank you. Go in there and knock off one by one these artillery pieces. That's just plain, ordinary, foolish. The Scud hunt. What did we learn from Desert Storm? Here's what we better take to us into Bosnia. The lessons from Desert Storm. And the first lesson is don't do it. We couldn't kill the Scuds, which are a whole lot larger, with all of this technology, with the greatest percentage of all our assets, and that is AWACS and JSTARS. AWACS and JSTARS are intelligence gathering and
global positioning,
C3I, command, control, and communication, and intelligence systems. With all of this, we couldn't do it. We couldn't find those Scuds. Now, let me tell you something. Those guns are a whole lot smaller than that. A whole lot smaller. And if you think...
And Bosnia's rocky terrain, mountainous terrain, it's not the
rocky
flat
terrain,
desert
that's
that
right.
Iraq
It's not
is.
an open terrain. It's not a desert. It is essentially
It's a lot harder.
It's a whole lot
It's gonna be a lot
harder.
harder.
It's going to be just about bloody well impossible to do. If we can't get the Scuds, if after Desert Storm, the defense minister of Israel made the statement that we never hit a Scud from the air. That was his statement. On the ground, then you know we're not going to get these guns.
Well, I want to talk to you about
If that's
your
what we're
visit to
going in
Iraq.
for.
I want to talk to you about your visit to Iraq. You went to Iraq with the express purpose of researching civilian casualties. Now, George Bush
Good stuff.
was talking about the high-tech military weapons would save lives because they would not have so much civilian collateral damage. Saddam Hussein, his numbers of casualties, extremely low, even lower than the U.S. estimates. Now, when you went to Iraq, what did you see there?
I saw something very different from what you folks saw. I looked down the alleys. I saw the bombed-out apartment houses. I talked to the people. I got in the street. Believe it or not, there's wild hair, which I did my best to pull back. And I was fortunate enough to find a translator to work with me because it took courage for this person to do this. I was not supposed to go in the streets. My trip to Iraq was shaky at best, and let me tell you this, I don't think you're going to win a trip to Baghdad on a game show. You know, you're just not going to win it.
A lot of civilian casualties?
Well, I'm telling you that from what I could see, from what I was told, and from what also I know to be true about the performance of so-called precision missiles, the highest number that I was given of casualties, civilian casualties, was 250,000.
That was
now,
given
that
to you
was
by?
the highest number, and that was given to me by a person who will remain anonymous, because I do want to make it clear to you.
Do you have sources that you have to protect?
Well, let's put it this way. This government in Iraq right now doesn't know its angels from its enemies, as I was told. And I will say to you that anyone who says anything other than what Saddam Hussein and his people want you to say is in danger of dying. It's real basic. You don't know, by the way, just as an aside, if you've never been to such a place, God knows you probably would not call me a flag-waving patriot, although what I think is what I do is patriotic. But you don't know how good it is when you're leaving a dictatorship. Because if you speak out against Saddam Hussein there, you're bound to lose your life. Not only that, not only will you lose your life, but your family and friends may well
also
go.
Targeted.
Yeah. And I got to tell you something. I want you to know that the people were lovely, and the government was a government at war. And I've got to be somewhat diplomatic because I want to go back to Baghdad.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Baghdad for the express purpose of investigating how many civilians were killed. And I took the tours that were set up by my minder, as they call them, the person who watches the
Foreign
researcher,
journal, right, the researchers.
Foreign journalist, exactly. I was under house arrest for 2 days when I first went into the.
You had a
to the
camera
city.
in your room?
Yeah,
like
it was
that?
kind of interesting. I was at the Al Rashid Hotel where all the journalists go, and the reason they go, I am told, is because those rooms are rigged, because they have cameras all through the hotel, and it's kind of interesting because they're not discreet about it at all. You can see they've got these cameras poking out of these appliques on the wall. See, they're kind of like up there in like a hokey fashion. They're not doing anything to hide it from you that they're watching you. You know, in my case, at any rate, early on. Now, I don't know that this is true with everyone, but I had heard tell that not only were there cameras in the room, as I saw with my own eyes, but that they tape oftentimes honeymoons of Iraqi married couples, and
Well,
they sell them on the black market.
That's a first here for, I guess,
Well, that's
US
what they
media.
say over there. These are some of
Yeah.
the rumors that circulate about the cameras.
Well,
So let me tell you this. I will tell you that no matter what you hear, it's impossible to believe that as few as 8,000 people died.
that's Saddam Hussein's
As a consequence.
civilian estimates
Saddam Hussein's estimates, surprisingly enough, are lower
than George
than
Bush's
the
estimate.
Yes, indeed. You've got to figure that this is a pact made in hell. This is the only thing they can agree upon.
Is
that nobody
down
died.
at those
Exactly.
estimates, those
Nobody
civilian
died.
estimates.
Nobody
Well,
died.
We have some video taken in Iraq, civilian casualties. Do you want to introduce it?
Let you introduce it.
Okay, go for it, because I know picture says 1,000 words.
Okay, here it comes. This is footage that was taken when Ramsey Clark went over to Iraq while the bombing was taking place. Pay particular attention, because I'm going to tell you something. Pentagon TV did not show you this. This is what they did not want you to see. Both George Bush and Saddam Hussein. And think about this as you're watching this. One person in the street said to me, when I asked her, I asked two questions. Did you know, were you hurt? Did you know anyone who died? These were the two questions I asked. Then if I got a yes, I asked where they were, and they told me where they were. And then one time when I asked this question, this woman said to me, are you crazy? Don't you think we died? You bomb us and you don't think we died? Do you think we're a cartoon figure? She said to me.
Well, let's take a look at the videos, and we'll be right back.
Look.
Your family was hurt? Your father was hurt?
Yes.
Tell me, what happened to your father?
His leg broken, and his hand, and all face. No face. No, his lips and nose, everything. His eyes.
From the fire?
From the fire and the...
Found the woman's father in the hospital. His face had been virtually burned off.
It's very badly injured.
And how about these people?
This one, this family had lost her 3 sons and her husband.
Does she know?
And his nephew, yes.
Does she know that they died?
No, she didn't know. We didn't tell her till now.
Doctor, are these the bodies of that family? The 2 women that are lying there? This is what's left of her family? That's it?
Yes, yes. There were others visiting them, I think, from the names we take, and they also get the same injury.
What do you say?
He's coming for his daughter.
And what happened to your daughter? You came to the hospital. What happened to her?
ايش بيها بنتك؟
اسمها إصابة.
He said she's get hit after she died.
She died?
Yeah.
How old was she?
سرقتي حريق.
قد عمرها عمي؟
61 ماتت.
قد عمرها 61 and 20 years old.
The doctors have reached the point of despair. An endless stream of victims. There's no electricity, there's no heat, there's not even water to wash your hands before you move from one victim's wounds to the next.
الله ينصر حج الله كل مسلم محمدي
The commercial district of Negev showed the effect of no electric power. A residential neighborhood showed the effect of more than a dozen direct bomb hits.
And what happened in this house here? What happened?
1 rocket.
A rocket?
1 rocket, yeah.
Is this where the people died?
Yes, 14 people.
14 people
Babies
died.
and women and men.
Yeah. What do you think of this war?
Stupid war.
Is it really?
Yes, stupid war.
The civilian casualties in the Iraqi war, really brutal video that we just got through seeing. George Bush said that the high-tech weaponry that the U.S. would have would reduce collateral casualties. It seems like the smart bombs really aren't any better than the dumb bombs that we've been using in the past. Can you tell us a little something about this clean war that just never materialized?
Well, the clean war is a dirty lie. That's the bottom line here. And that's what we need to understand here as we think about entering into Bosnia. If you still have, by the way, Jose, I'm not sure I have an appetite for food after saying this, but if you're fed up with the propaganda, and if you're fed up with censorship, then it's very easy to understand the dirty lie of the clean war. During the testing, the operational test and evaluation phase of the building of these so-called precision-guided missiles, and it is so-called, may I assure you of this, under ideal situations in the field during testing, when U.S. Army personnel are at the helm of aircraft who will bring in a missile to a target, envision, if you can, this is the way it's really done. This is the way we test our weapon systems. This is what we bought for $1.7 trillion. Envision, if you can, U.S. Army personnel at the helm of a
Carrot?
No, not a cat. If you want to
Okay.
use a cat, all right. At the helm of a fighter jet. And envision, if you can, this man is at the helm, and he's got his radio on, and he is being told, he is being led to a target that's on the ground, and it's a bullseye. And there on the ground is somebody with a laser, okay, who is directing in the aircraft, who is directing in the missile. And there's a radio set up, and this is an ideal scenario, and this is not war. All right, and this aircraft,
The sky is clear.
this aircraft is bearing something called low-level laser-guided bombs. These are bombs, these are precision missiles, these are bombs to be delivered at about tree height. Not at about 20,000 feet, not at beyond the range of artillery that is firing into the sky an iron wall of mortar. And that is what I'm explaining to you, by the way. When you think about this, I'm going to ask you to think of the way these weapon systems were tested. And that's in that ideal scenario with a target on the ground painted and a man directing you down. And in that condition, Colonel Jim Burton, who oversaw this testing, according to him, at that point, we achieved 60% accuracy.
On
At
the
60% accuracy.
best conditions possible.
Those are the best conditions possible. That is the golden bird. That is everything that you can do to avoid a miss. We get 60%. Now imagine trying to come in the chaos of war. Imagine coming in after there have been misses, after there have been bombing raids already, and
Smoke,
the area
you're dodging
is
sands,
hazy and
things like
it's
that.
aflame, and there is firing going on, and now we're at 20,000 feet, we're at 30,000 feet, we're trying to fly high enough away from a gun that is headed right up into the air, firing as much as 25 miles into the sky. Now, this is what we're going to have, I might add, with Bosnia, and this is what we had in Baghdad. And let me tell you something. They couldn't kill those guns in Baghdad. They couldn't kill those Scuds in Baghdad. The greatest disgrace of the Desert Storm was the failed Scud hunt. We couldn't kill a Scud if it ran us over, practically, with all due respect to all those people who tried and failed.
Now the Patriot, there was some great PR on the Patriot. What happened to the Patriot?
That was exactly what it was. It was great PR, and that's what this whole war was about, was great PR. And this PR brought us on a euphoric tide into Somalia, and where we thought we were going to use this same technology to fight off the same enemy. Well, guess what? In Somalia, we came across some people who were going to fight back. And fight they did. And when they're ready to risk 1,000 lives to die for that in one battle, That's enough to convince us that that we're not going to win in Somalia. Well, take it from me. We're not going to win in Bosnia either. And don't only take it from me. Take it from people who have estimated that airstrikes aren't going to beat it at all. That we're going to have to put 400,000 ground forces on the ground in Bosnia, because every war is won on the ground, inch by inch, foot by foot. You fight for territory, and that's the way it goes. And let me tell you something. A Scud, let me just point this out to you. Here is a Scud.
Well, I can give you, how about a carrot?
All right.
Look more like
This
a
is
Scud?
more like a Scud. This is more like a Scud convoy, as a matter of fact, because a Scud has a launcher, it has a truck to pull it, and it has ammunition. So this is actually a distinctive pattern configuration. Boom. There you go. Now, this is a gun. This is a gun such as you might find being fired against the Muslims. Now, look, check this out. Look at the comparison. Got that?
Okay.
All right. Now, we're going to use the aircraft here. All right? And the bottom line is this. Real simple. Along come these aircraft, and we're talking about, again, we're being promised the high-tech miracle. We're going to go in there, and we're going to do this using all of the radar systems and the high-tech systems that we used to develop to beat the war against the Soviet Union. We were talking about, had we gone to war in the Soviet Union, we would have been talking about 8 million miles, square miles. So we built all of these weapon systems, spent $1.7 trillion to fight a war in 8 million miles. Well, guess what? When we got into Iraq and we found ourselves in 27,000 square miles, something about the size of South Carolina, and in a desert, open terrains, guess what? All of that technology couldn't, for the life of us, kill these Scuds. As I said earlier, Moshe Aarons, who is the defense minister of Israel, who had every reason to watch what those Scuds were doing, because they were definitely, as you know, aimed at Israel. Guess what? We couldn't hit them. So here we are over here, all of this technology. Now for Bosnia, we hear, just like we heard over here, we got all of a sudden this super-duper miraculous artillery system and radar that's going to home in on this little tiny gun here, knock out. Now we think we have 500 of them. Perhaps they'll grow. It seems like artillery grow. You know, when we're talking about bomb damage assessments, and that's what they talked about during the war. Come back to the Desert Storm War and remember how day by day, as we talked about bomb damage assessment,
200 tanks.
200 tanks
300
one day.
artillery pieces.
300 artilleries the next day. But guess what? The day after that, it could be that we only killed 50. Neither the CIA nor the Defense Intelligence Agency could agree with the Pentagon's appraisal of the bomb damage assessment of Desert Storm. Now, let me tell you something. What we had going on in Desert Storm was wonderful, wonderful propaganda and unrealistic expectations of weapon systems that couldn't work, period. Over here in Bosnia, we have the same thing. And once we make that first airstrike, we are committed. We will have forevermore a hardened, embittered enemy to fight against us. And we're either going to have to turn and run, because I'm going to tell you something. No more than radar picked up a Scud. I can tell you this. Radar's going to turn the same blind eye to
the
these
little
artillery pieces. Dust,
mortar,
dust
yeah.
will confuse a radar. You've heard of 50 ways to leave your lover? I can tell you this right now. There are 25 ways to miss your target, easily. There are 25 ways, easily.
So let me get this straight, just for our viewers.
You can pick the wrong target. There can be haze. There can be clouds. There can be rain. There can be sun glint. Believe it or not, sun glint off of a puddle. Sun glint off of another tank. You can use aerosol sprays. You can use electronic warfare devices that put out a false signal that say that the mortar is here when in fact it's over here. You can use camouflage. You can use decoys. Now, I don't know how many I've got here, but I think I'm approaching a good number. All right? There are many ways of deceiving the so-called high tech.
Now, just for our viewers, so they know, during the Gulf War, this plane, which is going to be also used in Bosnia, same technology because the Gulf War was just
That's
recently,
correct.
could not find the Scud, a
That's
big
correct.
Scud. Now, propaganda or the public is being told that the same plane in terrain, rough mountain terrain, heavily forested terrain, terrain full of caves,
Using a
is going to
different
find...
radar now. We're using a radar. And remember what radar is. Radar is radio, detect, and receive. So what we have going on here, the only difference we hear going on here is that all of a sudden we have another magic radar. Another magic bullet is going to fire through the night and pick up this mortar. That's the only difference we're hearing. But we're talking about the same aircraft. We're talking about the same so-called precision bombs.
Okay. Now, the other thing I want to talk about, and this is an investigative report that you did during the Gulf War, friendly fire casualties.
Friendly fire is very important.
The GAO ended up
Right.
investigating because of your story.
Right.
Can you fill us in on the story that you focused on this Lance Corporal who was in a military base, his
Corporal Lancefielder.
Lancefielder, his army group, his battalion,
Young
took
man.
over this base. They left him behind to take care of some vehicles, and his compatriots went on. 24 hours later,
12 hours later.
12 hours later, for
Less
one
than
reason
12
or
hours.
another, the U.S. decided to attack that same base again.
The bottom line is that Corporal Lancefielder, and perhaps he should be named a colonel, and I'm sure if his mother had anything to say about it, he would be. And perhaps that's the least we can do for those people we kill of our own. I think the most poignant statement I've ever heard, and perhaps the most conclusive statement I've ever heard about friendly fire, is that, and this was said by a young man over there, who said it's a waste to be wasted by your own. And friendly fire is not only unnecessary loss of life, but in this case what it is once again indicative of a failure of technology. Because we designed supposedly all of this, and we spent all of this money, this
Right.
$1.7 trillion over the years, so that, not, by the way, necessarily to save lives, but to save assets. To save an aircraft from being shot down out of the sky as it was forced to go into the iron wall, for instance, that Bosnia is going to set up, or whatever. The bottom line with friendly fire is that when you, in the case of, for instance, Lancefielder, and this is a wonderful way to explain the failings of the electronic battlefield, as we call it. In the case of Lancefielder, we had his troop and his battalion, his men, of which there were 2,000, going through Hamhujal airstrip, which was just 27 miles or thereabouts square miles, a small little airstrip of no seeming importance. We had 2,000 men, and they were men probably, I doubt that there were many women, going through, to attack Hamhujal airstrip, where there never was an enemy. There never was an enemy. Well, Lancefielder's truck broke down, and he and 4 other men, a total of 5 men, stayed behind with the truck. And they relaxed and they took off their helmets, and they settled in for the night. And unbeknownst to them, there had been a breakdown of C3I, command, control, and communication. And lo and behold, another 7,000 men got the order to attack this very same airstrip. And by the time it's done, we have 10,000 military personnel mobilized in 12 hours to kill an airstrip where there never was an enemy. And what do we kill? We kill one of our own. We kill a young man and we wound another. And that is the best that our technology has to offer. Because let me tell you, what we had out there was we had M1A1 tanks, we had factory-fresh M1A1 tanks, the very same tanks that will be brought up, I might add, in Bosnia. We had OH-58Ds, Deltas. These were reconnaissance helicopters. The best helicopter you could possibly put out there. It had infrared, and with using infrared, like cold fingers reaching for warm bodies, they swept this area of Hamhujal. And guess what? Nobody saw Lance Fielder. What did they see? Somehow in their mind, they saw Iraqis. These 5 men, 5 young boys, were somehow transformed through the modern technology miracle of the electronic battlefield from 5 young boys to a whole group of
Iraqi
soldiers. And now, again, I want you to remember, this is friendly fire and this is high technology. And this is what we're getting. And this illustrates what can go wrong in Bosnia. Up pulls an M1A1 tank. At the helm is Captain Friesen. He is 300 meters from Lance Fielder. He looks across, and
with
300 meters. Now
top of the
that
line
is
electronic
just
scoping
top of the
sights.
line. Factory fresh M1A1 sights. And what does he see? Iraqis. He is no further than the length of 3 New York City blocks. That's what he is. That's how far away he is. Now that's our high technology. And guess what? They opened fire on Lance Fielder. And Lance Fielder, who had, before he died, as he was being fired upon, saved his man, Napier, his colleague, who saved his own man. He was a true hero. As they were opening fire on him, Lance Fielder thought to save his comrade. And as he ran out there to save his comrade, he was fired upon and he fell to the ground. And he was crawling on his hands and knees to the foxhole. And they wouldn't stop firing at him.
Because they thought he was an
continued to
Iraqi
fire on
soldier.
him. Captain Friesen had stopped firing on him. But guess what? On an ironic twist of fate, the son-in-law of the same General Abrams, for which the Abrams tank is named after, actually ignored the order to cease fire and kept firing on Lance as he crawled. And he died with his head hanging in the foxhole, and the last words in his mouth were, "Oh my God."
Well, we have some video of friendly fire deaths and also a video of Corporal Felder's mother. Being a veteran, the one thing I know about friendly fire is that it isn't.
And remember this is the importance of this as we look at it, is remember this. We are going to be doing the same thing again. This same technology is out there. This is what we're going to bring to bear in Bosnia. This is what's going to save lives in Bosnia. This is what's going to supposedly facilitate peacemaking in Bosnia.
Friendly fire was hardly unique to the Gulf War. In World War II, the Battle of Normandy, Allied planes dropped bombs intended for Germans inside American lines. 100 American soldiers were killed, 500 wounded. In Korea and Vietnam, the percentage of combat deaths due to friendly fire may have been as high as 20%, but the numbers in the Gulf War are especially striking, since our modern-day army is so technologically advanced.
It snuck up on us, Alex. All I can tell you, it snuck up on us. It snuck up on me. It snuck up on the army. It snuck up on our leaders. You know, I guess it was going to be a good news war, and it ended up having some downsides. I don't think war is very good news.
For Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Hales, it turned out to be terrible news. A highly respected, highly decorated Apache helicopter pilot, he was singled out by the Army for an accident in which he fired on friendly tanks and killed 2 soldiers.
I have the 2 vehicles in sight. If there's one of them is in fact killed, and I'm going to go ahead and shoot the other one now. Roger, go ahead and take him out.
That's Hale's voice on tapes of the mission on a dark night with the target tanks barely visible in the distance. Hales misread some coordinates and mistook the tanks for the enemy.
I'll be firing in about 10 seconds. Roger. Here it goes. I guess you could say that hit it. Gunfighter 6 completely destroyed the first target with the first bullet.
Several minutes later came the chilling exchange that changed Colonel Hale's life.
Our news stalwarts reporting as to maybe friendly vehicles may have been hit over. Don't street there say that. Roger, I was afraid of that. I was really afraid of that. 5 is engaging their target. Now they're just
Hale's life has changed forever because of the friendly fire accident, as have the lives of the victims' families. And there, too, the Army may have made the situation worse by delaying notification.
Not only did we forget how terrible it was when it happened to you, friendly fire, we forgot our responsibilities in notifying families. Everybody has learned to expect quality information. We're an information society. All the information of friendly fire came out anyway. And look at the poor handling of friendly fire that was done by the government to the families.
We're back with our real story investigation into the cover-up of friendly fire casualties during the Persian Gulf War. And joining us here in our studio, Debbie Shelton, mother of Sergeant Lance Fielder, who in the confusion of battle was killed by American soldiers. Also joining us, one of the 3 men reprimanded for the friendly fire death of Fielder, Captain Bo Friesen.
And in our Washington Bureau, a Desert Storm scholar who has uncovered other examples of negligence and cover-ups following friendly fire casualties in the Gulf War. Patricia Axelrod joins us. Thank you all for being with us tonight. Debbie Shelton, let me start with you. How did you find out about your son's death, and what were you told at the time?
Originally, we were told they sent 2 casualty teams, one to my home, one to Ron's home, to inform us that Lance had been killed. They told us he had been killed engaging the enemy in Iraq. And then we received a telegram 2 days later confirming that. In May, on May the 2nd, one of Lance's comrades, after returning to Saudi Arabia, called Ron at 2 in the morning.
And Ron is Lance's father.
Lance's father, I'm sorry, yes. Called Ron and said, I don't care what the Army's telling you, they've been lying to you, and Lance was really killed by the Americans. I'll be home soon and I'll tell you all the truth. About 2 hours later, Lance's company commander called Ron and told us that he didn't know, or told Ron he didn't know, that Lance's friend had already called. You know, we don't think we would have known.
Was your reaction dramatically different as soon as you heard that it was not the enemy he was engaging, but his own troops? Because I guess at some point you can say, well, he did this for his country, he wanted to represent the United States, and he knew the risk. Was that your first reaction?
Absolutely.
Other than the sorrow of losing your son?
Absolutely. What Lance did is no less heroic, but it certainly puts a cloud of deceit over what happened, and it just opened the wound up all over again. We started all over.
And did you suddenly feel like even more this didn't have to happen? Did that make it seem more senseless than had it been a conflict?
More senseless and betrayal by our government.
Bo, you were out on the field that night.
Yes.
What happened? Why was Lance Fielder killed?
From what I've been able to piece together since then, we were ordered to attack an airfield that had already been captured by Americans 12 hours earlier.
You think this happens all the time, Bob?
Well, I don't think you should blame the military. People act like they actually do this on purpose. War has become the safe for our troops more than it's ever been in history. And there's no absolutes. With war, you're going to have accidents. And these people didn't mean to kill their own people. I think you're being absolutely ridiculous with this whole show.
I'm going to have to disagree with you on that, sir. We spent $1.7 trillion through the 80s for the express purpose of developing the so-called high-tech electronic battlefield. And these systems were represented to us and to our Congress members, those who voted upon these systems, as systems that would save life. We should have advanced beyond a state where we are killing our men from 300 meters. Understand, sir, that in the case of this incident, what happened here was a breakdown of C3I, that's command, control, communication, and intelligence. That's the core of military management. And when that happens, you have chaos on the battlefield.
Friendly fire deaths, really sad. Another thing that you're investigating, this thing called HERO. What exactly is HERO?
HERO is an acronym. It was coined by the Navy in the 50s, and it's called the Hazard of Electromagnetic Radiation to Ordnance. That's what it stands for, and it is for that I got my MacArthur grant. And essentially, what HERO is about, and my particular area of expertise, is to analyze the detrimental effect of electromagnetic radiation on weapon systems.
Now, electromagnetic radiation on weapon systems, an example would be...
Pollution.
Electronic
Let's call it
pollution.
electronic pollution, for lack of anything else. You know, everything electric puts out a signal. And a good way for you to think about this is to...
if you're talking about some don't use radio, two-way radio, because it could result in a unexpected
detonation of a blasting cap. Signs that warn against using two-way radios around blasting caps, around dynamite. If you have, in fact, right up here on Wisconsin Avenue, drive by all of those antennas there around the Sears area, and your radio, you're going to lose your radio for sure. Now, that's called the electromagnetic interference. And when it happens to a weapon system, it's called a hazard of electromagnetic radiation to ordnance.
If anything, the Gulf War demonstrated that smart weapons can be fouled up by very simple things: sand, smoke, poor programming. But there's another phenomenon that brings problems for high-tech weapons and is increasingly worrying defense experts. It's known as EMI, electromagnetic interference. In the increasingly complicated electronic battlefield, the mass of radio signals can create havoc. In the skies, satellites emit radio waves. These can affect a pilot's navigation equipment and the electronic triggers that release his bombs. On the ground, communications equipment can interfere with computers in weapons, tanks, and ships. International experts see the modern battlefield as a fog of electronic pollution that will only thicken as technology advances. The more sophisticated or smarter weapon, the more prone it can be to EMI. In the complex electronic battlefield of the Gulf, Patriot may have fallen victim. This week has discovered that in the early stages of the war, it launched itself 5 times within 5 days.
I believe the Patriot firings very well may have been due to electromagnetic interference. 3, 4, 5, 6 firings were totally inadvertent. They launched themselves.
Despite the failings, the myth of Patriot and other high-tech weapons lives on.
Investigations about the effects of electromagnetic radiation on weapon systems convince people that if you get a stray signal into a complex or into an electronic circuitry, you're going to counter-command the intentional signal. This can account for accidental firing of missiles and rockets, and we had accidental firings of Patriot in Desert Storm. Aircraft can fall out of the air like dead mosquitoes.
A HERO accident on a U.S. naval carrier resulted in 100 deaths or more.
That's right. Well, first let me finish up the one business about the aircraft. Number one, you know, with these highly complex fighter aircraft, the pilot is flying a computer, and the computer is flying the aircraft. And if you get a stray signal in there and countermand that intentional signal, let me tell you something. The pilot's got a hard road ahead, as in fact his automatic pilot or her automatic pilot and stabilizers and weapon systems and fuel pods and everything that is electronic on that aircraft can go haywire and bizarre. And these, of course, are the same aircraft that will be delivering the computer-guided, laser-guided weapon systems that we're talking about using in Bosnia. And again, we're coming back to Bosnia, where, as we remember, Desert Storm, and I do call it Desert Sham. And the reason we're coming back to Bosnia, and the reason we keep talking about Desert Sham, is because HERO, the unintentional, the entry of stray signals into any of these highly complex weapon systems can cause the aircraft to crash, the accidental launching of missiles and rockets aboard, and the incident you mentioned, for instance, the Zuni rocket, the firing of a Zuni rocket across the deck of the USS Forrestal, which caused the death of about 154 Navy personnel.
Hundreds more injured?
Well, we don't even know how many were injured. We don't even know how many were injured. And I don't right now, but I'm sure someone does, as there's always someone who knows and someone who doesn't when we talk about the Pentagon. But the bottom line is that HERO is extremely dangerous. It's ironic that it should be called HERO because it is no friend of the U.S. military, and it does cut right across friend or foe. Doesn't know the difference at all. HERO's like having an invisible hand on the trigger, or a pilot in your cabin who's trying to sabotage your aircraft. That's what HERO's about.
Well,
and that's what we also risk in Bosnia, and that's what did in fact bring a lot of troubles to Desert Storm, and that's what I got my Casa grant in.
Well, just as a coincidence, we have happened to make a HERO sandwich, but in your honor, for all your hard work and bringing a lot of things to light that would normally not see the light of day, we're going to rename the HERO sandwich the Shero sandwich. Folks at home, when you go out and order a HERO, order a Shero. Remember, wonderful person here, working very hard. Thanks a lot. Had a wonderful time on the show. Good luck on your efforts, and we hope to read about you, about your investigative reporting all over the place. Hope you had a good time.
Thank you, I did. I had a very good time, and shall we take a cut?
Let's do it.
All right.
What we saw on television was a deadly video game, a dangerously sanitized, bloodless version of warfare. Brought to you by Pentagon sources, defense contractors, and quarantined reporters. In the wake of the war, many in the United States have been eagerly celebrating this military victory. But victory at what price?